Hello everybody and welcome to One Player. Today on the table and spanning the expanse of the table indeed, it is Architects of the West Kingdom. This is a worker placement game from Renegade Game Studios, designed by Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald. This has a dedicated solo mode, but you can play it with up to 5 players, and they say the playtime is around about an hour. I've found that my solo games run a little less than that. And once you start to get the hang of things, I think you can get the playing time down just a little bit. Now, this video is going to be all about essentially just getting you to the table, setting up the board, setting up your player, and basically just showing you around. There's complex enough mechanics and rules for us to get started that I wanted just to get a video out to get you to the table. And then if you want to see some gameplay, then stick around, and on the channel coming up, I'll definitely be doing a playthrough of this because I've been having a lot of fun with it. Been playing it a lot, and hopefully I can replicate some of my good games on camera for you. So as you can see on the table, we have this lovely and gigantic playing board. This is where we're going to place our workers, hence worker placement. And we're going to be able to place them in any of these larger or smaller circles, depending on what actions we want to take in the game. We can also place them in the guild hall up here, and this allows us to either build buildings or work on the cathedral. Now the reason we want to do that is, the reason we want to do anything is to score victory points. At the end of the game, we're going to add up all of our victory points, and basically the player with the most, either us or the AI character who has the most victory points, is declared the winner. There's only a couple of ways that we can get victory points. One, the virtue track over here. This is basically how virtuous we have been throughout the game. So there's a couple of things we can do that add virtue, for example, like donating resources to the king here through their king's storehouse. You'll see that gives us 1 virtue point. We can also gain virtue by working on the cathedral. Rather than building our own buildings, we can help the king with his wonderful cathedral project, also gain virtue that way. And there's plenty of ways we can lose virtue too, by doing shady dealings, either stealing from the tax stand or accessing the black market to gain our goods, rather than doing it the old-fashioned way and just swinging our pick down in the quarry, or indeed the forest, the mines, or the silversmith. So what that means is as the game progresses, your virtue is going to go up or down depending on how good or how bad you are being, and that at the end of the game is going to give us a particular score, either losing points for negative virtue or gaining victory points for positive virtues. So you can choose essentially how nasty or nice you want to be. The other way that we're going to earn victory points, which are noted by these little yellow ribbons, I should say, everywhere on the board, and the other way we can build the cathedral. So the more we add towards the cathedral, the more times we build parts of the cathedral for the king, we increase our victory points that way as well. So the first time we build in the cathedral, we're going to score ourselves 2 victory points here, but the next time we get to move up the ladder and score 4, 7, 12, and if we build in the cathedral 5 times, we'll score ourselves 20 victory points. You can see there's certain resources required to get to each level, and we'll talk about that maybe later, maybe not. The third way we can earn victory points is by building buildings. I mentioned you can go to the guild hall to either build the cathedral or build your own buildings, and here they are. So each building gives us a grand total of victory points. You can see them on the top right there in those ribbons. So each building we build gives us a potential amount of victory points, and then some even give us extra victory points at the end of the game. So for example, this carpenter's hut, it'll give us 5 at base, and then it'll give us 1 extra victory point for every carpenter we hire from the worker row. The final way we can earn victory points is either by having marble or gold in our inventory at the end of the game. And these will get us 1 victory point per resource. So a half decent way to do it. In the solo game, your opponent is going to collect a lot of marble. We might not necessarily, but it is possible, and it's one way we can do it. Again, if we don't want to build or we don't want to gain virtue, again, we can come to the king's storehouse and start trading in maybe some of our other resources to get our hands on some marble, or go to the mines and mine for some gold. So essentially, in a nutshell, we're trying to get victory points. And most of your turns are going to revolve around gaining resources in order to make those buildings, in order to get those victory points. So again, either through the cathedral or through the guild hall. The virtue track isn't a massive source of victory points at the end. You can see even if you get to the top virtue slot, you're only going to get 7. So it's not as profitable in a victory point sort of way. But that's really it. We're going to be gaining resources, and we're also going to be doing some actions that allow us to manipulate our own and our opponent's workforce. So once we've placed down some workers over a certain amount of turns, and we've got workers of, the opponents in yellow here and ours in purple all over the board, they're fixed, right? They're gone. They are no longer able to be played by us, and they're just going to sit in those slots. They do increase the amount of resources we get from those slots. So you can see, like, if I were to revisit the forest now, if I've already got 2 workers on there, I would now pick up 3 wood because I've got 3 workers sitting there. So you increase your reward the more you revisit an area. However, what happens if we are done collecting wood? We don't want any more wood. We're not going to use it in any more. We've already built all the buildings we can, and we don't think it's the most profitable for 3 other workers to be standing around the forest. We can take actions, especially on the town centre here, to recapture those workers back to our playing board so we can use them again to keep placing them in different places. Maybe we want to go and get some clay, or maybe we want to go to the guardhouse or the silversmith, or any sort of, any of the other locations. We can also, if we see a nice gathering of our opponent's workers that are seeming to be doing very well for themselves, right? This guy's maybe this guy's really mining very actively, and we want to stop him from getting all that gold, which is worth points at the end of the game as well. We can place another worker on the town centre and go and capture all of his workers from a particular spot and place them on our game board. They are kind of become our little political prisoners, which we can actually sell to the prison for profit. So there's an interesting capturing mechanic whereby, again, we're manipulating either our own or our opponent's workers, and they can do the same thing to us. So be on the lookout for that. With that very brief overview of some of the mechanisms and some of the, the aims of the game, let's talk about getting it set up and to the table. For a solo game, there's a couple of things that we need to do slightly differently to the regular setup. One, we're going to remove the following 4 cards from that deck of buildings that we talked about just a moment ago. So we're going to take out the wood market, the stone market, the silver market, and the clay market. That's because they give us victory points at the end for having the most of a particular resource, and we'll always have the most of a particular resource in a solo game because our opponent doesn't collect any resources. So these go back in the box and we don't use them. The other thing that happens in a solo game is our opponent is chosen for us. We are going to face either Constantine on the regular side of difficulty or Helena on the more difficult side, so she's kind of like an advanced AI, if you will. And these folks have 2 decks. One deck is the regular scheme deck. It has these brown tops, and this is going to basically, during the enemy turn, we're going to pull a card, and that tells us where they're going to place their worker. So that's the stack of regular schemes, and that'll go off to the side with the player board. The second deck they have are these future schemes, which have these grey tops here, and these will get periodically added to the regular scheme deck and shuffled in, essentially as a reward for your AI. So usually they're slightly more powerful, they have better rewards, and so your AI will get more powerful as the game goes on, as more of these future schemes are added to their existing deck. So you're going to want to set that player board and those 2 decks off to the side, and then you're going to want to choose a color to play against. So I'm going to go with yellow here, and we've got 2 player markers and 20 workers. The workers are just going to go right on top of the player board. And the markers, one is going to start on the virtue track at number 7, and the other is going to start under the cathedral. This is going to mark their progress and how much cathedral they have contributed to throughout the game. We're going to choose our player board now. So I'm going to go with this lovely purple color, the fetching Ada. And again, same thing. We've got 2 player markers as well, 20 workers. These are going to go off to the side. And our player markers are going to sit under the cathedral and on virtue 7. We are also going to get 3 silver to start with, so pick out 3 silver to put on your player board as well. So 1, 2, 3. And we're going to draw a hand of building cards. These are the green-backed cards that I already showed you with the various victory points on. We're going to draw 5 of these. We're going to pick 3 and discard 2. So the 3 are going to be ones we want to build, and obviously the 2 are going to go back to the bottom of the deck. And we're going to choose these. You might have an idea of what you want to start with, you might not. But I'll show you essentially some of the things you want to be on the lookout for. All buildings have a cost, so this is the resource cost here, so this is going to cost us 2 wood, 2 stone, and 3 gold. And then some buildings either have an immediate reward, some buildings have a reward at the end of the game. So for example, this factory is an immediate reward, it's got the little lightning symbol, it gives us 2 marble right away as soon as we build it. And some buildings will have rewards that take place at the end of the game. So you see this one has an immediate reward, 1 virtue, again the purple on the virtue track. And then it has an end of the game reward as well. So this little flag denotes that for every debt we lose 1 less victory point. So that probably doesn't mean anything to you right now, but just know that there is immediate and then end of game rewards on some, if not all, buildings. You're going to choose 3 of these, like I said, and discard 2. And those ones you choose are going to be what you want to work towards building basically as soon as possible. Next, you're going to want to shuffle the apprentice deck, that's these blue-backed cards, and deal them out into the 8 slots down here at the bottom right. And these are the workers that you can hire throughout the game in order to help you either gain more resources, complete your buildings a little faster, gain victory points, all that different stuff. All of these are out here. Now, you might also notice that on some of these cards, for example, again, let's look at the factory, it has this little hammer symbol in the top. That means we need to have hired a hammer apprentice, such as this gatekeeper here with the hammer logo in the top, in order to complete this building. You'll see that this one has one of all 3 symbols, so the artisan, the woodcutter, and the stone hammer, whatever it's called. I'm not a big stickler for names. So we're going to need to have hired at least 3, and again, you can see that even this debt collector, there's 3 different versions of him. 1 artisan, 1 stone, 1 wood, and we can collect them all we'll have to collect them all in order to build the fortress. So once those 8 are laid out, you're going to set this off to the side of the board as well. Next, we're going to plan the rewards for the cathedral. We're going to pull 5 different reward cards, that's these little scrolls here. We're going to shuffle them up and deal 5 onto the top of this scroll. Every time we increase a level, we're going to take one of these, or the opponent is going to take one, until they're all gone. And these will typically give us nice things for completing a level of the cathedral. For example, this one gives us 2 virtue instead of 1. This one gives us a virtue and 2 wood. This one gives us a virtue and a building. So nice rewards for us for completing cathedral steps first, or indeed before our opponent. We're also going to set up the black market, so that's these little cards with the resource symbols on them. We're going to shuffle them and have them face up on this small market side. That's where the maximum is 2 resources. The other side is what's known as the big market, and that'll get activated once we actually start working in the black market later on in the game. But for now, the maximum of 2 resources is always face up in this smaller cart, and it's going to go on the small market space right over here, down to my bottom left. You're also going to take this stack of debt cards and put those to the side as well. You can see there's a debt card, there's a debt side, and a paid off debt, which is shattered and gives you virtue. These will lose you victory points at the end of the game if you have them. And that's pretty much it. You're ready to take a turn, in which, again, you're going to take a single worker, place them on a single location, and take that action. So, for example, if we place them on the quarry, we're going to score 1 stone per worker into our inventory over there. We can either keep that on our playing board, or we can keep it somewhere else, but as long as it's separate from the main supply, then you are good to go. Then our opponent is going to take a turn, and from that current scheme deck that we talked about, they're going to flip the top card, place their worker on whatever location comes up, so in this case the workshop, and then take the action that's notated from top to bottom on the card. So in this case, they're going to pay 2 coins to the tax stand, and they're going to take this apprentice out of the market, and then we're going to shuffle these along and refill it with 1 from the deck, upside down. This goes in a discard, and then it's our turn. Simple as that. Really steady, consistent gameplay, and it's all about brain burning, right? It's all about finding those combinations, finding the ways to get the resources we want, to build the buildings we want, and building the glorious West Kingdom Cathedral. That is where I'm going to leave this video. Just a nice and short one for you to get this to the table. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments, and look out for a gameplay video on this coming out very soon. Because of the sheer size of the game, I'm going to have to I'm gonna have to rig up some extra cameras so we can actually capture all of the gameplay happening. But this should get you started. This should get you to the table, ready for a solo game of Architects of the West Kingdom. And thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please do drop a like. That does help out the channel immensely. And until next time, I will see you later.